And then he falsifies documents. And you come to the kingdom. You say we are advancing the kingdom. You are not. Because God can't trust you with the powers of the kingdom. Before you get to that point where God can say, this is my daughter, you must have, through prayer, come to a point where you are able to substitute your will for the will of the Father. If your will conflict the Father on any subject of life, do you have the fortitude to let go of your will and adopt his will? That's capacity in the place of prayer. Only prayer can furnish that level of authority. And when men get there, suddenly God invests upon their lives the power to advance the kingdom. Abraham was seeking God for more than 25 years for a child. And I love the way God's servant painted it. He said, Hannah was praying to God for a child. But God didn't give her the child because God will demand the child. So God had to allow her to get to a point where she could give up the child before God gave her the child. Because while she was praying for a child, God was preparing a prophet. Her son is not as important as a prophet of Israel. So the two had to be weighed on the balances. You want a son that you will pride in and say, now God have answered my prayer. I'm looking for a prophet that will lead Israel, including your family. Your son will be part of your family. The prophet will rule the whole of Israel. Your family is part of Israel. There is one greater than the other. And before the one you are looking for is answered, my own will be answered first. And so Hannah on the altar came to a point where she was willing to let go. And the moment she got there, her prayer was answered. But when her prayer was answered, God's prayer was also answered. Because when you are praying, God is also praying. Abraham said, I have no heir. Is this Eliezer of Damascus that will take over from me and win all my inheritance? And God said, well, I am looking for the one that will bear the promise. Because Isaac is not just Isaac in the flesh. Isaac is also symbolic of Jesus Christ. So I'm looking for somebody who will have capacity to provoke salvation to the face of the earth. That's why Abraham became the author of salvation. And that's why when Jesus came, he said, Abraham, your father saw my day, and he rejoiced in it. Because when Abraham went to the mountain in Genesis 22 to sacrifice Isaac, and God showed him the lamb, he saw beyond that day. He saw the day of Jesus Christ. So God was looking for a man through whom he can activate salvation. Because if salvation doesn't come to the earth, you and I will go to hell. Abraham was praying for a son that will live with him for 30, 40 or 50 years. God was looking for a son that will save the whole world from death. But it took prayer for Abraham to get to a point where when God demanded Isaac, he could give Isaac over. And the moment he gave Isaac over, he became the father of many nations. He said, I have sworn by myself. The first time he called Abraham in Genesis 12, he didn't swear. But when he spoke to Abraham in Genesis 22, he swore by himself. He said, now I know that you fear me. When did he know? When he got to a place where he could give up his own will for the will of God. Most of you, we have to receive capacity in the place of prayer to be able to surrender your will and adopt the will of God, even when it is painful. That is the channel into ranking in this kingdom. When we were driving into this place, I looked at my friend and I told him, are you aware that they locked this gate at 7:05? When we saw the volume of cars outside and the number of people, I said they shut this gate by 7:05. Now the publicity is not on billboards. How did you know? What force pulled you here? Are you aware that there are many people who have prayer houses and they have publicity on radio, on Facebook, on YouTube, and on billboard, and the door is open to the end of the meeting, yet they are not up to 200? That means publicity is actually not what brings men. It's the power of the Holy Ghost and the authority that is invested on a person. Now, how do people enter into that level of authority? Because they have come to the altar, and the altar have taught them, the more you give up your will and allow the will of God, the more the power of God will be committed to you as a token. And so one woman prophesies over thousands of homes, and yet there's another woman who is praying to God for her children and her immediate family, and she can't even have answers. Meanwhile, what the woman who thinks her home is all there is does not understand is that she also has the same capacity that this one woman speaking to 10,000 homes have. She has the same capacity, but she has not journeyed in prayer to a point where she's able to give up her children, to give up her husband, to give up her career, to give up her business, and say, Lord, if it is my business you want, I will give it. If it is my family you want, I will give it. And the moment you do that, the jealousy of God is invested upon that business. He will not take it, but he will now empower it, because that business will become a platform through which the glory of God will be seen. The day you say, Lord, if it's my children you want, I give them up, that day the glory of God will come upon that your child that you have been advising that won't listen. The moment you sacrifice that child on the altar, that child becomes God's property. And beyond your advice, the Holy Ghost begins to manipulate the destiny of that child. This is how great women were able to rule their worlds, because through prayer they understood reverential submission. The reason most of us can't go far is that our prayer altar have not been able to challenge our selfishness.